Being Human. Written and read by Frank Emanuel Ierna. Chapter 4: Epigenetic Inheritance. When a baby is born into this world, many people are excited by their first glimpse at this miracle of life. They can't wait to see if the baby has its mother's eyes or father's nose. As the child begins to mature and develop its personality, it's very common for others to say, "You have your father's temper," or "You have your mother's patience." But have you ever considered the deeper qualities that may have been inherited? We all know that our physical traits are passed down from a parent or a grandparent or even a great-grandparent. It is also known that we inherit mental traits by having similar brain patterns from a parent or grandparent. But have you ever considered the fact that offspring inherit life experiences? For instance, one's failures, successes, fears, desires, and traumas could all be passed down into the deep mental coding of the offspring's brain. Carrie Ressler, a neurobiologist and psychiatrist at Emory University in Atlanta, Georgia, and his colleague, Brian Diaz, studied laboratory mice trained to fear the smell of acetophenone, the scent of which has been compared to those of cherries and almonds. He and Diaz released the scent into a small area while giving electric shocks to the male mice. The animals learned to associate the scent with pain. In time, this caused them to shake when they smelled acetophenone, even without a shock. This reaction of fear associated with a smell was then passed on to their offspring. Diaz and Ressler reported in Nature Neuroscience. Despite never having encountered acetophenone in their lives, the offspring exhibited increased sensitivity when introduced to its smell. If that isn't amazing enough, consider that the third generation of mice, the grandchildren, continued to exhibit the same reaction, as did mice conceived through in vitro fertilization with sperm from males sensitized to acetophenone. These responses were paired with changes to the brain structures that process odors. The mice sensitized to acetophenone, as well as their descendants, had more neurons that produced a receptor protein known to detect the odor, compared with control mice and their progeny. Structures that receive signals from the acetophenone detecting neurons and send smell signals to other parts of the brain were also bigger. Epigenetic inheritance is the process of inheritance happening not only through the DNA code that passes from parent to offspring. It also means that a parent's immediate life experiences are passed down to future generations in the form of epigenetic tags. Scientists used to think that a new embryo's epigenome was completely erased and rebuilt from scratch. Now they can see that this isn't true. Some epigenetic tags remain in place as genetic information passed from generation to generation. Epigenetic inheritance adds another dimension and could prove to be a complete detour to our previous understanding of evolution. In the old way of thinking, the genome changes slowly through the process of random mutation and natural selection. It takes many generations for a genetic trait to become common in a population. The genome, on the other hand, can change rapidly in response to conditioning from the environment. Through epigenetic inheritance, a life experience that a parent has can be passed to future generations. What one experiences today in life, conditioning, can be passed down to their offspring. Does this mean that by living with a mind that has been conditioned to have negative responses to its environment, we are passing that on to the next generation? Yes. In turn, by living a life of acceptance, we are not passing pieces of this thought process to future generations. There is potential for a deeper understanding through applying this knowledge to the self. Many of the delusions of the mind have been programmed through conditioning, but some of our thoughts, fears, or responses have been passed on through epigenetic inheritance. How do we distinguish one response from another? The two questions that arise in my mind are, is there a way to overcome the responses? Or could we simply learn to live with these mental traits and attempt to train ourselves to have other responses? These questions bring about a higher level of awareness. Epigenetics is at the forefront of science right now. There are new studies being published and new testing results being made available, which have blown the old beliefs about genetics out of the water. You cannot simply believe that you are a certain way because of how you were raised, or accept it as being a family trait. Remember that the epigenetic encoding based on your parents' and grandparents' life experiences may be heavily influencing your mind. Whether or not this is something that can be changed through awareness is still a question that has not been answered. Be the answer.